Kia ora katoa, ko Brent toku ingoa. Thank you everyone for coming today. Today we're talking about our other parts of our community as well, which is our neuro and linguistically diverse. And in this session, it's about people living with intellectual disability. It's my pleasure to welcome our colleagues from Spectrum Care. Obviously, Hannah is our practice lead in speech language therapy, and Peter from Spectrum Care's advisory team. And they're going to lead us on a session about internet and what it means for people with intellectual disabilities and how they can connect, learn, and access information. So it's my pleasure to hand over to both of them and welcome them to our Netsafe whānau. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. So today we're going to be talking about people with intellectual disabilities and some of the fantastic opportunities, but also some of the challenges that come with accessing the internet. So if we can, over to you, Peter.
Kia ora, my name's Peter. I live in Spectrum Care, and I also have a job with Spectrum Care, which is the advisory short for the 18. What the 18 does is we interact with people to see if they are working on their goals, making sure the service is what they need and want it to be. We help people give feedback to Spectrum.
Awesome, thank you, Peter. And tēnā koutou, ko rangitoto te maunga, ko pupuki te roto, no tamaki makaurau aho, ko Barnes toku whānau, ko Hannah toku ingoa. So kia ora everyone, my name is Hannah, and as Brent said, I'm the practice lead of the speech and language therapy team at Spectrum Care. So as a speech and language therapist, our role is quite broad around supporting communication. Now, communication can be all forms of understanding information and expressing yourself. Anything that's any kind of interaction, any kind of thinking, decision-making, all involves communication and understanding information. So today, talking about that in the context of understanding and sharing some of the communication and information online.
So what Spectrum Care is it's basically a disability support provider based across the North Island. We support 460 people in supported accommodation. People living in houses supported by staff. We have a range of other providers too.
Yeah, so Spectrum Care has a range of different services. Most of our work is in residential or supported accommodation, where people are supported by staff, but there are a range of people living in different kind of more independent situations as well. We support adults with intellectual disabilities. So that's things like autism, it can include cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, and many others. Though, of course, it's important to note that not everyone with autism or cerebral palsy will have an intellectual disability, but we're supporting those who do. It's really, really important to note that the disability community is incredibly diverse. And although we're going to talk today about some of the general challenges and support strategies, every individual is really unique and has quite different support needs. So the next thing we wanted to talk about is a little bit about what do people use the internet for. So instead of listening to us talk, we've got a video that we're going to share with you. So I'll just stop sharing my screen and reshare our video. Share sound. All right, so this is a group of people we support down in Wellington who have kindly offered to share some of their experiences about using internet technology.
Hi, my name is Adrian Gordon, and I use my devices on my phone, my tablet, and my mum and dad's computer at home.
Hi, I'm Tess. I use my cell phone and my laptop.
Hi, my name is Tessa, and I use my phone and my laptop.
I use a cell phone.
Hi everyone, I'm Noah Smith. I usually use a phone, that's an iPhone, and also a iPad and a desktop computer. Sometimes I access the apps on the iPhone and of course the iPad.
I use the computer and my phone and my TV or TV.
Android and iPad.
iPad and iPhone.
You use to message your friends?
Messenger or Facebook.
I go on Messenger.
And Micah, I've got contacts.
Yeah.
And many other things. Thanks for asking.
On Facebook, Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp too.
And I use my phone to go on Facebook and check my emails. I use Instagram, Snapchat, and I go on. Yeah, and I go on Google. Yes, I got everything.
So I use Skype, Facebook Messenger, Google, Spotify, Facebook, Tribe, YouTube, and Netflix, Meetlink, WhatsApp, Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, and Voxer.
I got a Kiwi Bank because I want to be independent to go to flatting soon. So I want to use a Kiwi Bank so I can ask my mum for money or my dad for money so I can buy something like buy ticket for the train or top up your snapper or go to the supermarket and get some $5 for fuse or something like that. So that's why I got a Kiwi Bank. It's easy to know how much money I've got, and you'll know I will buy this and that.
And also I do online banking.
What apps do you use?
I use Facebook, Google Play, YouTube, and some movie apps that I use on my phone.
Facebook, Instagram, and what other ones? TikTok and WhatsApp.
Instagram, Facebook, and Tribe. I use general apps. YouTube, Messenger, and Snapchat.
I use social media, Facebook.
Play some games. I like watching cool movies. I don't use my iPad as well sometimes. I don't do anything with it, like make my own show to it.
On YouTube.
What websites do you go on?
WWE.com, the NZ Herald, stuff.
Facebook, and I look at stuff.
Mainly Wikipedia.
Oh, YouTube.
Yep.
I go on YouTube.
I don't have a website.
Oh, website. I use Netsafe.
Kind of like it's kind of personal, really.
The same passwords for all of my apps.
I got a password on my cell phone, one on my laptop, and my iPad, and my watch. I use different password for the different website.
I use the same password for my logins.
It's important to check your balance. Think of a PIN, and you got to remember it on your phone, iPad, tablet. Yes, it's easy, honestly, it's perfect.
I keep them in like a diary. Yeah.
It's all in here. It's all in here, bro. Yes.
Same password or different?
Same password.
Mum, do it for me.
I gotta give my same password if I can, or give my mom one.
I give the same one for every website.
All right, so big thank you to the Maranga team down in Wellington for helping us out with that video. Let me just come back to our PowerPoint. Here we go, over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Anna. So as the video says, they use it for Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever else. There's so many out there. It's the same as everyone else. We need it for our day-to-day lives.
Absolutely. So if we're thinking about why access is so important, it's not any different really for people with disabilities compared to the general population. Internet is such a key part of life now, and especially over the last sort of 2.5 years, I think that's really emphasised it for all of us. We need the internet for whanaungatanga, that connection. It's often how we keep up to date with people, with our extended whānau, how we share news and photos and funny things as well. We use messengers, video chats and voice messages as our primary means of communication for most of us. For all of us, but sometimes especially disabled people, using the internet and technology can enable independence. It gives us access to things like maps, the weather forecast, our money, and it's how we can get help if we need it, if we're out on our own. It's also how we access public information, how we check the news websites. In particular, over the last couple of years, so many of the COVID alert changes and information about public health has come out online. Political information like Facebook Lives from politicians like Jacinda Ardern are now quite a regular thing. And so having access to social media and to the internet is really important to be able to engage with all of those kind of political and news and public information. Having access to the internet can also help with employment opportunities. People with disabilities have some of the lowest employment rates in the country, with only 38% of people with disabilities aged between 15 and 64 being employed, compared to 78% of non-disabled people of the same age group. So the internet can help increase that access to employment for some. So for instance, some people who might be creating a micro enterprise or a small business, social media or the internet and web pages can give them a platform in which to share what their micro business is, connect with potential customers and sell their products. For those of us who can work from home, we all know that working from home and the flexible working arrangements can make work so much more accessible for us. And for a lot of disabled people who might have previously maybe struggled to physically access a traditional work environment, or maybe had difficulty with the sensory experience of a traditional work office, being able to work from home can mean they can access employment more easily. Of course, health is also a significant consideration, and for many people with disabilities, they do have vulnerable health or might live with others who have vulnerable health. So being able to work remotely and accessing the internet can really help them make sure that they still feel safe but are able to work. So what are some of the challenges and how do we keep safe?
All the same risks as everyone. I do think some disability people have problems on the internet, but so do many other people in their day-to-day lives. People need to learn the same things as everyone else, like how to use passwords safely. For me personally, the internet is not a challenge. I'm concerned with how many scammers are out there.
It's mostly the same challenges, but in addition, sometimes people's views and biases around disability can be a challenge in of themselves. Sometimes people, whether it's the general public, whether it's support staff, or sometimes whānau, might not think that people with disabilities should or could access the internet independently. And for others, it just doesn't occur to them that they might need to. Access to technology and equipment is also important. Obviously, without access to that stuff, you can't access the internet and you can't learn to use it safely. For many in the disability community, especially with the limited access to work, it can be really difficult to be able to afford these kind of devices. Where is it going there? Sorry, bear with me. So access to technology and equipment. And then knowing who to trust is also critical. So a lot of disabled people have a range of different people in their lives, and often a lot of support staff who come and go on a semi-regular basis with staff turnover and for all sorts of reasons. People are telling these support staff important personal information that they need to know in order to provide the right support for them. But that can make it even more difficult to know when it's appropriate to be sharing personal information and when it's not safe to share personal information with someone, even if they're saying they're trying to help you.
People are diverse and capable in using the internet. Don't make assumptions. People's supported needs are different. Always assume people are capable.
So although we don't want to make any assumptions about what a person can or can't do, these are some of the key things that we might consider when supporting people with disabilities to access the internet. So people might have difficulties with memory, remembering their passwords, remembering how to access something, and learning how to use something can take a little bit longer. Most people with an intellectual disability will also have some kind of language difficulty. Now, language is not an all or nothing concept. When thinking about language, it's helpful to think of learning a second language. We don't go from knowing nothing to being totally fluent. There's a whole range of understanding and skills that lie in the middle of that. And that's kind of how we can think of a language difficulty. People might need a little bit more time to process information. They might understand the keywords, or they understand language around things they talk about often. But if it's too much, too fast, then you can get a bit lost, as we all do when we're kind of learning a second language. So that's a helpful way to think about language skills of people with disabilities. Literacy is also another big one, and many people have lower literacy levels than the general population. Although to some extent this can be avoided and this can be supported by a lot of voice messaging, video calling. For some things, you don't need the same levels of literacy. However, if we think particularly around privacy settings, security information, a lot of that is still in quite densely written information. Social networks are a key way for all of us how we learn what's okay, what's normal, what's appropriate, and how to engage in social interactions and on the internet. For a lot of people we support, although some have incredible networks with heaps of friends and heaps of whānau who are really involved, for a lot of others they can be quite isolated. And due to a range of reasons, including things like access to social or public environments, limited access to employment or adult education, where people might typically find friends or colleagues, as well as communication difficulties, sometimes the networks around a disabled person might be smaller, which means they have less opportunity to learn from their friends. And then, of course, there are things like physical access to technology and devices. And some people may need adaptive equipment, which can be difficult and expensive to access. Other people may also have a whole range of different sensory or visual processing challenges that make accessing some of that mainstream technology and websites a little bit more difficult. So what do we do about this? How do we educate and make sure that we have things accessible?
People have the right to use the internet and make decisions on what they want to use it for. There are risks. People need to be informed about these in a way they can understand. Like, for an example, people
information or people pretending.
Yeah. Sorry. People pretending to be someone then they are not. Or scammers. Disability people need to get this information in a way they can understand. Give people a chance to try things out and give their feedback. If there's a risk, talk about it and make a plan. It's important to talk to who to trust.
So accessibility, what is accessibility? We use this term pretty broadly now, but a lot of us will think of things like wheelchair ramps, which of course are critically important. But just like people need to physically be able to access all environments, we also need to think about accessibility in terms of the information that they're able to access. Just like physical access, information accessibility helps everyone. It's broader and more important than just the disability community. So for people with English as a second language, for the aging population, for people with acquired conditions like a stroke or traumatic brain injuries, for people with visual impairments, and for a whole range of others, including, to be honest, you and I, anyone who's tired at the end of the long day, it's much easier to understand and digest information when it's presented clearly and simply. So accessibility helps everyone. One of the easiest, most practical ways that we can start checking our own accessibility of information that we provide is through using readability scores in Microsoft Word. So the felt reading ease scores are quite a simple measure which take into consideration things like the length and the sentence structure. They can be a great starting point, and mostly because the vast majority of people who are creating online content are going to have access to Microsoft Word. So it's quite simple. You can turn it on just by going to Options, go to your proofing settings, and then just tick Show Readability Stats. When you do your spell check, you then get shown the felt reading ease score. So the higher the number, the simpler and the more accessible your writing is. Oops. So some other key things to think about when we're trying to make information more accessible is to have voice or audio access. Consider also having sign language videos. Use pictures to represent the main pieces of information that you're trying to communicate on your page. Break information into small chunks and clearly label these with clear headings. Use bullet points to break down information. A bullet pointed list is far easier to understand compared to a long paragraph. Highlight the key words so people can spot that information quickly. Utilize services like People First, who I'll talk more about on the next slide. And also check out various accessibility add-ons that you can get for websites. For instance, accessibility add-ons where you can get it to read the screen out loud to you and those sort of things. Thinking about the color contrasts you have on your website. Once you start Googling, there's a whole world of information out there about how to make things more accessible. People First are a New Zealand-based self-advocacy organisation, and they are led and directed by people with learning or intellectual disabilities. They provide some excellent easy-read guidelines, which you can find on their website freely available. They also have a translation service where you can send them your documents and they'll send it back to you in an accessible format. Some of the work that we've done with Netsafe, we've started to create some more accessible information about how to access the internet. And as Peter said, it's all the same issues and all the same topics, all the same concerns that the rest of the population using the internet have. Nothing's particularly different. It's just around making information slightly more accessible. So we've been working together with Netsafe to create a bit of a library of resources. And so far, we've developed more resources on online safety, being happy online, romance scams, online bullying, and information on how people can get help if they do have concerns. There are written resources as well as some videos. These can be accessed by people with disabilities themselves, or potentially their friends, whānau, or support staff, and can be a really great place to start having a conversation about the internet and how to use it safely. This is just a start, and we're really excited to see where we go, both together with Netsafe and also in the disability community. It's an exciting time of change and growth with the new Ministry for Disabled People, Whaikaha. There's going to be a lot of change and a lot of focus on making sure that things are accessible for all types of different people with different support needs. So we're excited to see what happens in this space. On an individualized level, there are a range of different things that we can do to support people and to support conversations about what they use the internet for, potentially what they feel safe using, or what they need to learn more about. This is an example of a particular kind of visual support called a talking mat. It's a visual communication or a thinking tool that can help break down some complex ideas and some big topics into simple questions that you can think about one at a time. Our group from Maranga, who you saw in the video at the start of this presentation, have also been working with people to have group conversations and do a lot of that shared learning and just talking about what people are using. So in summary, disabled people are on the internet. If you're creating content, assume that disabled people will need to access it as well. People have the right to use the internet the same as any other adults, and we need to actively support and encourage people to learn to use technology safely.
Always think about how you can make your information more accessible and easy to understand. Everyone needs to be careful and safe on the internet.
Awesome. So thank you so much for taking the time today to listen to us. I think we've got a bit of time. I'll stop sharing my screen and we're happy to answer some questions.
Some comments in Q&A from Lance. I'm happy to summarise them if you'd like me to, or okay.
Yeah, no, that would be cool. Just
Lance says that he has helped people with intellectual issues and learning difficulties and reading issues in the past, and he helps them with security issues, and he's kind of like their buddy, and says, you know, if you're unsure, contact me before clicking. So that's a way he helps people, and he said he's been doing that just this morning, helping people with their phone and trying to help them keep security safe from online scammers.
And I think one of the cool things about working with Netsafe is, to be honest, before we started this project, I personally didn't know who you would have contacted in that instance. But for people out there who don't necessarily have someone that they can always go to, having that help guide so that you can contact Netsafe as soon as you're unsure was really helpful information for me to know. I think, Lance, it's awesome to see you out there supporting people to access the internet and be a bit of a sounding board. I know one of the challenges that we've sometimes come across is that you might have a staff member who is excellent and supports people a whole lot, but then when that person takes a different role or whatever happens and that staff member no longer works there, that can be a challenge. I know that recently with Apple keep updating all their security settings, which is good, but also really challenging for someone who just wants to access an iPad. If they don't have an email address and a phone number to have all those backups, that can be really tricky to even just be able to use an iPad for photos. So I think having someone to go to and having it written down, whose phone number is this, if it's your backup phone number, is really important.
Yeah. Lance also says that his mum helps him. He says he's dyslexic and has difficulty reading and writing, and his mum is very helpful in helping him to understand complex writings or proof things that he wants to write, such as contracts and stuff like that. So he does rely on his mum for help with that.
Awesome. And yeah, I mean, as we talked about, hey, like accessible information is so important, not just for the internet, but everywhere. And I know there's been some interesting stuff in the news recently around literacy levels in Aotearoa and actually having simple, easy to understand information about everything, especially, you know, some of the government websites, employment contracts. There's some really important documents out there that people are signing and don't necessarily understand. So I think talking about accessibility and accessible information can do a world of good for so many different groups and different populations within Aotearoa.
Yeah. And one last comment from Lance. He says video messaging must have made communication easier for many.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you use video messaging much?
No, but like for example, on like Teams and whatever, I use that for work. So that was when we were in COVID lockdown and we stayed home, and I had to use all that. But now we're back in the office. So.
But you quite often use, is it the voice transcriber?
Yes, I use the voice recognition on my phone because it's just, for me personally, I'm kind of slow at, well, not slow, but slow-ish at texting. So I just use the voice recognition. I find it really easy, actually.
Yeah, so even though you can read and write perfectly fine,
yeah,
it's just easier and quicker.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And a question for both of you from another attendee. What is the most rewarding part of your job?
Wow, I really do not want to say the money.
No, but the money is important, and it is really important.
So yeah, the money is important, but what I really like about my job is like I'm kind of a people's person, so I basically love interacting with other people. It's kind of a highlight, like because there's so much you wouldn't know about that person that's actually refreshing.
Yeah. How do I top that? Yeah, I think I'm without copying you, I think I'm probably similar in that it's just really cool to get to know people. as a speech therapist, I guess my role is never talking for a person, but providing access for them to share who they are and to kind of maximize their potential, and lots of problem solving and thinking and trying to work through complicated situations and environments. But it's really cool to just see all these fabulous, funny, interesting people out there and help them to build relationships and connections and to access information that they need to live the lives that they want to live. Cool.
Great. Well, that looks like all of the questions and oh, there's one more. Okay. Do you have any information or tips about net safety in a school setting, primary, secondary, etc.?
Not specifically. However, Netsafe do have, if you go to the website, they now have, I think there's information for parents, information for schools, and they now have an accessibility tab in there as well. So there is some more kind of school specific information there. But I think, to be honest, working with a lot of adults and young people, the most important thing from my perspective is make sure that things have been talked about, right? Like people are going to access the internet, they are going to go on Facebook, and they are going to go on Snapchat and all of these different things. And it's really important to talk about these things and to talk about what to do if you're not sure. And yeah, I think it's an interesting generational divide sometimes as well. I know that, a lot of people in that video at the start of our presentation are a lot more tech savvy than my mum. And so sometimes it is about supporting peer-to-peer learning as well, and giving people those safe opportunities to talk to each other about what they use, what they do, what they're comfortable with. And then if they come up with any questions or something feels a bit uncomfortable, getting help. And maybe that's a good rule of thumb as well, is that if something feels a bit, then that's a good time to stop there and go and find some help. Any other thoughts or comments, Peter?
No, not that I know.
We just have one comment from an attendee who says, thank you very much. And no more questions coming through. Does anyone else have questions or comments? No, doesn't look like it.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come and listen to us. I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much to both of you. That was wonderful.